Hi guys, so today's content is all about functions as we are given a parabola here. Now let's check the information that you are given. We are given that f of x is equals to what? Is equals to x plus 1 all squared plus what? Plus q. And then m and n are the x-intercepts of our function. And then we have our turning point, which is what? Point t. Now what is the first question? The first question is calculate or determine the coordinate of what? Of m. We have two ways of determining the coordinate of m. Number one is to calculate the value of q using the coordinate of n to get the coordinate of m. Number two is to do what? Is to use the x turning point, which is what? Which is 1. Remember, the x turning point is the x coordinate of the turning point, and then we know that the x coordinate of the turning point is equals to minus 1. Now let's go back to option number 1. Option number 1, we said we must calculate the value of what? Of q. Remember something, my f of x is given by what? X plus 1 all squared plus what? Plus q. I can write this as what? Y is equals to x plus 1 all squared plus what? Plus q. Now we need to use the coordinate of what? Of n to calculate the value of q. Now let's check something. What are the coordinates of n? We have 1 and 0. Remember, x is what? Is 1 and y is what? Is 0. Where I see y, I substitute what? 0. Where I see x, I substitute what? 1. Now let's carry on. This is going to be 0 is equals to what? What is x? X is 1. 1 plus 1 all squared plus 1 plus q. And then I have 0, which is equals to 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 plus q. Meaning q is equals to what? Minus 4. Now it means my function is given by what? F of x is equals to x plus 1 squared minus 4. Now remember, the goal is to calculate the coordinate of what? Of m. In m, what is y? Y is equals to 0, because according to the statement that you are given, they said that m is the x-intercept. Now I'm going to substitute 0 where I see what? Where I see y. This is going to be 0 is equals to x plus 1 squared minus 4. Remember something, this squared tells me that to open two brackets, it means I have what? 0 is equals to x plus 1 minus 4. This is what? 0 is equals to x squared plus what? Plus 2x plus 1 minus 4. Remember something, I have 1 minus 4, this is negative 3. It means I have what? I have 0 is equals to x squared plus 2x minus 3. All I need to do is to solve for x, but I'm going to open two brackets. It means I have 0, which is equals to what? X. Remember something, these first two terms of the brackets, when I multiply them, they must give me my x squared. And these last two terms, when I multiply them, they must give me my minus 3. But when I add or minus them, they must give me positive 2x. Those terms are going to be 1 and what? 1 and 3. But let's check something. Remember this important statement that the value of the what? The sign of the bigger term must take the sign of the middle term. What is the bigger term here? The bigger term is 3. What is the middle term? The middle term is positive 2x. It means 3 must be what? Must be positive, and 1 must be what? Must be negative. It means when I calculate the value of x, I'm going to have what? X minus 1 is equals to what? 0. Or we say x plus 3 is equals to what? 0. It means here x is equals to what? 1. For what? X is equals to 1, I have this coordinate, and then here is going to be x is equals to minus 3. It means I have what? Minus 3 and 0. Remember something, these are the coordinates of what? Of n. This will be the coordinates of what? Of n. Now let's use option 2 of determining the coordinate of what? Of m. We said option 2 is to use the x turning point. What is the x turning point? The x turning point is negative 1. What do we mean by the x turning point? We mean that the x coordinate of the turning point. Now let's check something. We said our xtp in this case is equals to what? Minus 1. Remember when we were calculating this x turning point, we said what? We said xtp is equals to x1 plus what? X2 divided by 2. What is this x1 and x2? This x1 and x2 is the what? Is the coordinate of your what? Is the x coordinate of your x-intercept. Now let's check something. Here xtp is what? Is minus 1. This is equals to x1 is the coordinate of the what? Of the x-intercept of f. But we don't have that. We are looking for that. This is going to be what? X1 plus 1. What is x2? x2 in this case will be what? Will be 1. It means I have x1 plus 1 divided by 2. All I need to do is to make what? X1 subject of the formula. Remember something, I have equal sign, I have fraction. All I need to remember is cross multiply. It means here I have what? Divided by 1. This is going to be what? 2 multiplied by negative 1. This negative 2 is equals to 1 multiplied by this whole number is what? Is x1 plus 1. And then I need to make x1 subject of the formula. It means here I will take this positive 1 to this other side. I will be left with minus 2 minus what? Minus 1. This is equals to what? X1. It means our x1 is equals to minus 3, of which it means now the coordinate of n is what? Is minus 3 and what? And 0. Now the second question is determine the coordinate of what? Of t, which is our turning point. But before we determine the coordinate of t, we must first calculate the value of q in our function. We have calculated the value of q in the previous question, of which q was given by minus 4. In other words, my function f of x is equals to what? X plus 1. So x plus 1 all squared minus 4. But remember something, this equation is in terms of the what? Of the turning point 4. In other words, this value here is my x coordinate of the turning point. This value here is my y coordinate of the turning point. But remember something, this value will change the sign. In other words, my xtp is what? Is minus 1. If it was minus, in this case here, it will be positive 1. But for the value of what? For the ytp, we take the value of q and its sign. What is the value of q? Is minus 4. It means my ytp is minus 4. This in the coordinate form will be what? Will be minus 1 and minus 4. In other words, the coordinate of what? The coordinate of t is minus 4, minus 1 and minus 4. Now guys, we are given that g of x is given by minus f of x minus 5. Now the first question according to this statement, it says to us, determine the equation of g of x in the form of what? G of x in the form of ax squared plus bx plus what? Plus c. But let's remember something, the most important statement is that g of x is given by minus f of x minus 5. In other words, my friend, I have g of x is equals to what? Minus f of x. What is f of x? F of x was what? X plus 1 all squared minus 4, because the value of q was minus 4, close bracket, minus what? Minus 5. In other words, I need to simplify everything up to this point. It means I will start by simplifying inside my bracket. Remember something, I have g of x is equals to minus open bracket. This will be what? This will be x squared plus 2x plus what? Plus 1 minus 4 minus 5. But I'm not done simplifying inside my bracket. Remember something, I still have like terms. In other words, I will have what is equals to minus 1 multiplied by what? X squared plus what? 2x. What is 1 minus 4? 1 minus 4 is minus 3, close bracket, minus 5. And then I have what? I need to multiply everything inside the bracket by minus 1. It means I'm going to have what? I'm going to have g of x is equals to what? What is negative 1 multiplied by positive x squared is minus x squared. What is negative 1 multiplied by positive 2x is minus 2x. What is negative 1 multiplied by minus 3 is positive what? Positive 3. And I still have what? Minus 5. In other words, g of x is given by what? By minus x squared minus 2x. What is 3 minus 5 is minus 2. We have determined this. We have determined the equation of what? Of g of x in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. What is my a in this case? My a is minus 1. What is my b? My b is minus 2. My c is what? Minus 2. Now the last question to ask is what? Discuss the nature of root of g of x. Remember something, when we discuss the nature of root of a function, we need to determine what? We need to calculate the value of the discriminant. What is my discriminant? My discriminant is delta is equals to b squared minus 4ac. Now let's substitute our values. Remember something, my b in this case is minus 2. This is going to be equals to what? Minus 2 squared minus 4. What is the value of a? The value of a is minus 1. In other words, I have multiplied by minus 1. What is the value of c? The value of c is minus 2. In other words, I have multiplied by minus 2. Now let's calculate our what? Our discriminant. It means here I'm going to have what? What is minus 2 squared is positive what? Positive 4. Remember something, this is going to be what? Negative multiplied by negative is positive. It means I will have 1 multiplied by 2, which is positive what? 2. And then I will say minus 4 multiplied by that's positive 2. I will have what? Minus 8. In other words, here the discriminant is what? Is minus 4. But if the discriminant is minus 4, remember something, I can't get the root of the what? Of the equation, because the discriminant, when you are calculating your what? Your x-intercept, which are the root of the function, was inside the square root, and you can't have what? You can't have negative inside the square root. What I mean is that, remember when you are calculating the x-intercept of the parabola, you said you have what? Xtp is equals to, x-intercept is equals to minus b plus or minus what? B squared minus 4ac all over what? 2a. Remember something, this discriminant is inside the square root, and we know that our discriminant is minus 4, and we know that we can't have negative inside the square root. In other words, you can't get the what? The x-intercept, or we can call it the root of the equation, meaning that here the roots are what? Are imaginary. You can't have the roots.
Azzaro Forever Wanted, the new elixir.